On today's episode, we are going to be talking about one of the most iconic and most badass movies of all time as we celebrate its 40th anniversary. Today, I'm going to be talking about Aliens. So, stop your grinning and drop your linen as Cine James Movie Talk starts now. What's up, everybody, and welcome to Cine James Movie Talk. I am your host, Mr. Cine James himself, and today I am going to be doing a discussion on one of the most iconic movies ever made as it celebrates its 40th anniversary. I'm talking about James Cameron's Aliens. But before we get into that, you know what to do. If you like the show, you like the content, you're listening to me on YouTube and Spotify, give me that like, give me that follow, subscribe, show me some love. I greatly appreciate all of your support. Before we get into this movie, as always, I'm going to run through some of the quick stats on this movie. So, Aliens, released on July 18th, 1986, with a runtime of 2 hours and 17 minutes. This movie was directed by James Cameron. Had a budget of $18.5 million, and it ended up with a box office of $183 million. This is one of those movies. When you talk about, when we talk about those, and by the way, real quick, instead of my normal lighting, I went with just a little bit of I went with the blue light just to kind of go along with the Aliens color scheme with the title of this movie. So trying something just a little different here for you on this episode. But with this movie is such an iconic, and you are going to hear me say this word a lot during this episode, badass. This is one of those movies where if you were making, it's a nonstop, it's literally one of those nonstop adrenaline, 80s, cocaine, steroid pumped infused action movies. It is awesome from start to finish. It is one of those, as we talked about when we discussed Terminator 2, this is another one of those movies that's a masterclass in movie making. This is one of those movies that where if you were to make a list of all the boxes you needed to check off for what a movie should be, this movie is it. And this is another one of those. It's a big movie from my childhood. When it comes to the Alien franchise, this movie was actually the first one I had seen. I had seen this on TV, probably like Sci-Fi Channel, one of those. And of course, you know, here I'm young kid, young boy. So I'm liking anything that's got the action in it, and that look and that feel. And I was also a horror movie fan. So I come across this and I see, the aliens and stuff. And I already kind of had, when I first seen this, I already had a little bit of reference to Aliens because of one of my all-time favorite movies. And I can't wait. We are going to have an episode someday where we're going to talk about this movie. But one of my all-time favorite movies, Spaceballs, where at the end of Spaceballs, they have the chest burster scene. So that was kind of my first introduction to what Aliens was. But this movie was what got me into the franchise. So I saw this movie first, and then I went back and I saw the first movie, Alien, and then I saw Alien 3, so on and so forth. And this movie is this is one of those rare instances where, and we're going to do an episode on this, and this is going to be fun, where the sequel is better than the original. And I say that with all the love and respect to the first one. The first movie, directed by Ridley Scott, Alien, that came out in 1979, that movie's iconic. It is iconic, just the same as Aliens. I had the opportunity a couple years ago to go see that in theaters for an anniversary re-release, and that was absolutely amazing. The first Alien movie is also a masterclass in cinema making and suspense and horror, and creating that claustrophobic environment. But there's something about, I think what this movie did, and when I say it's a better sequel, if this makes sense, I don't necessarily mean that it's superior to the first movie. The first movie holds its own, and they both are great in their own ways. I guess what I mean by for me, in my opinion, when I say this movie is one of those that is the sequel's better than the original, it's just because of what it created. It took what the first movie did, and it just took the dial. It took the meter up past 11. And it also kind of, it's one of those two, and the reason why I say it's better too is because it didn't copy the original. It took the blueprints, of course, from the original, but it made it its own. James Cameron said, "Hey, I see what you did with the first one, but I'm gonna take what you did, and I am going to just turn the meter up big time. I'm gonna create," and it is a James Cameron movie. And this was actually, he was still at his early stages of filmmaking, if I'm not mistaken. What established him with this movie was Terminator. This was like, I believe at the time, this was like his second big budget, like his second big blockbuster movie. So we have a very young James Cameron coming in on this, and you can tell if you can see a lot of the similarities, especially in some of the opening sequences and throughout this, you can see a lot of similarities in the way it's shot versus Terminator. They have a lot of similarities in their look and feel. And this movie, it just all around, and this is one of my all-time favorite movies. I can watch this movie every single time. I never get tired of seeing this movie. The version that we're going to discuss, they have two different versions. They have a theatrical cut, and then there is a director's cut. So we're going to be discussing a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about in here is going to also be about the director's cut version of this. But if you've never seen the director's cut, I suggest that you do. It's really awesome. But if you've never seen the director's cut and you're listening to this based on the theatrical run, you're not going to be out of it. The director's cut just has some extra scenes that give some more exposition and context to the movie. But again, what makes this movie also iconic is we have Stan Winston creature effects. The effects that Stan Winston's crew did on the aliens in this is absolutely amazing. This is one of those movies that kind of the same way as Terminator 2, that the pacing on this is solid from start to finish. And this is another one of those where it is a hardcore action movie, but it also it has those moments where the movie does slow itself down, but it doesn't slow itself down to where it takes you out of the adrenaline rush that you're in. And the scenes that it does slow itself down on, they serve into the story and they allow for the exposition and the pacing to be really solid. One of the biggest things about this movie that gives it that badass feel is we get the introduction to the colonial Marines. And again, when you see these guys, this is what I'm talking about. This is where it is one of those, when they get into this is where we kick into the pure adrenaline, steroid-infused, cocaine-infused 80s feel to an action movie. These guys are over the top. They're awesome. And they play into every 80s action trope of that macho kind of feel to it. And then on top of it too, the one thing about this movie is obviously Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. She returns, reprising her role from the first movie, and the same thing. She takes the dial up and she just turns it all the way up. And it is without question, when you see Sigourney Weaver's portrayal in this movie, without question, when you think about 80s macho, you think about 80s the tough guys, the good guys, and you're talking about, like, for example, you go into the 80s and you have Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was doing, Terminator, Commando, Conan. You have Bruce Willis doing Die Hard. You've got Sylvester Stallone doing Rambo and Rocky. Jean-Claude Van Damme at this point with Bloodsport, and you're creating those 80s like those macho badass characters. Without any question at all, you without a doubt are throwing Sigourney Weaver into this. She has that mix in this movie, and we're going to talk about it as we go. She has that mix in this movie of just that softness that she needs to bring to the character, but then when she needs to be, she's tough, she's awesome. She has that macho type feel to her and everything, and she's just really awesome in this movie. So give you a quick little synopsis of this movie, of Aliens. 57 years after the events of the first movie, Ripley is found floating through space in hypersleep and is revived as she finds herself going back to the planet LV-426 with the aid of the Colonial Marines to face off yet again with the aliens who have destroyed the colony living on the planet. Only this time, the alien threat is more than just one. Again, they took they took the blueprints from the first one, they took the dial of the first one, and they cranked it all the way up on this. And so I'm just going to kind of run through. I have a lot of notes and stuff with this movie, so we're going to kind of run through. We're going to chat this up, go through some things on here. We get the iconic opening with the aliens' letters, and that was a cool thing too. When we think about sequels, they didn't just call it Alien 2. You know, they used Alien 2 for like the working things in the background of this stuff, but it was really cool. They just didn't call it Alien 2. It was, you have Alien, and then you have Aliens. And it was really cool with this title screen. Now, I will say this. The original Alien has a much more iconic title screen, but this follows suit along with it. We open up to, again, picking up where the first movie left off, where Ripley is being recovered from the escape ship when she fled the Nostromo, when she set the self-destruct from the first movie. She is also back with her cat Jonesy as they are in hypersleep. When she comes to, after there was a salvage team that found her, and she comes to, she meets Carter Burke, who's played by Paul Reiser. He is absolutely he's fun in this. He's an awesome. He brings an awesome job to Carter Burke. And it's also pretty cool how they're setting this up in the future. And, you know, I didn't think about it as a kid, but as you're watching this movie, they're trying to set that futuristic look. And they took at the time, they took classic suit sport coats, and just to give it that futuristic look, they just flipped the collar up. It's absolutely awesome. I love it. But he is Carter Burke is a representative for the Weyland-Yutani Corp. And she finds out that she has been stranded out in space for 57 years. And then we come to, she has a dream sequence, and it's still in the hospital. And we have that dream sequence where the alien chestburster starts to come out of her as she comes to. And then we get the moment, and this is really big in the director's cut, where she's asking about her daughter. And she finds out that her daughter, when she left from the first movie, her daughter was 11, and she comes to find out that her daughter has passed away. I believe it's at 66, 67 years old. And you get that scene where she sees the picture of her daughter at that age as she passed away. And actually, behind the scenes to that, that picture that they show of Ripley's daughter is actually in real life. I believe that is actually Sigourney Weaver's mom. So that was really cool. So we go into where she has a meeting with the Weyland-Yutani reps, and they are basically recapping the events of the first movie, talking about the crew of the Nostromo, and that she had, talking about how her actions setting the self-destruct button, and finding out, she's talking about that they... what happened on a planet LV-426, and that when they went to investigate, they found nothing on the planet. And then they decide, upon the review of her actions, to blow up the Nostromo and everything, that they suspend her as a flight officer. And then she finds out through conversation with them, when they said that they haven't had any alien activity, they haven't had any activity or anything that she has discussed with them, that they've had a colony on that planet for the past 20 years. And again, they've not reported any signs of alien activity. So then we go to the planet LV-426, and this is the planet from the first movie where they encountered the alien. We see a colony working. We see the colony working as we meet an 11-year-old Newt. She's out with her family in like a little rover, and they come upon the alien craft from the first movie. So this is really cool. This is a really cool way to have those connective tissues from the first movie to this movie. Really awesome the way that they did it. And when you look at some of the shots, again, of course, when you look at some of the shots, you could, in some of these scenes, even though this has a way different look than the first one, a lot of this stuff you could connect. It does have some of that tone and feel and look to connect a lot to the first one. We talked about that on my 4th of July with sequels, how what makes a good sequel to me is how it looks. It has a look and a feel like it is connected, like it was shot at the same time or has that same feel as the first movie. And this, again, this movie is visually and everything, it is way different than the first movie. But when you look at some of these scenes, you see those connective tissues, and this is definitely one of them. So her parents leave her and her brother in the rover, and they go to explore the ship, and then they come back with the dad having a face hugger on him, and then we then cut to Burke going to Ripley's her room with Lieutenant Gorman, and they tell Ripley that they've lost contact with the colony on LV-426, and that he wants her to go with the Colonial Marines to the planet just as an advisor to see what has happened. He tells her that if she does this, she can get her flight commission reinstated, but she declines. Then waking up from another nightmare, she calls Burke to accept. And then she asks Burke basically, because again, going through her mind of what happened in the first movie, she's asking Burke basically and saying, hey, we're not going there to preserve these things or bring them back, right? We're going there to kill these things, right? And Burke tells her, you have my word, which we're going to find out with Burke's character as this goes, that is not the case. So now we're getting to where this movie is starting to pick up a little bit more, and we're really getting into this. Now we go to where we cut to the Colonial Marine ship, the Sulaco, where the crew wakes up from their hypersleep. We're introduced to the Marines as they prepare to make way to the surface. They're led by Sergeant Apone. We have Hicks, Vasquez, Hudson, Gorman, Frost, Farrow, and Bishop. And when you see these guys introduced, it's just super badass. We get that scene where Vasquez, I'm trying to think, I can't think, I'm trying to think of the lady's name, and it might come to me later. I believe her first name is Jeanette, but she has also been in a lot of other movies. She was there's a connective tissue with her and James Cameron. She was the foster mom in Terminator 2, John Connor's foster mom. And then she was also the older mom in Titanic in the third, I believe it was the third class passenger. And when the ship is taking on water, she is the mom that has the scene with her kids where they know that they're not going to get out of the room, and she lays them down and she's kind of putting them to sleep and telling them the story as obviously they're going to meet their end. So she's worked with James Cameron on a lot of stuff, but in this movie, she's just awesome. And we have that scene where she's doing the pull-ups, and it's I think it's Hudson. He says to her, and it's so awesome. He says to her, hey Vasquez, has anyone ever mistaken you for being a man? And she comes down and she says, no, or she says like something to the effect of like, no, what about you? And it's like one of those sick burn type of things. Like, it's just showing the relationship that these Marines have with each other. They take jabs, they take shots at each other, and I really like the chemistry that they all have. They genuinely look like when they're taking like the jokes and the one-liners here and there, with their sergeant and everything. They genuinely look like a well put together crew. Like they have that, and as far as the chemistry they bring, it just looks like they're genuinely having a fun time doing this. While they're sitting at the dinner table, Ripley finds out that Bishop is actually an android, and she's not about that at all because of what happened to her with Ash, the android Ash, from the first movie. And this is where we get that iconic scene where they take Hudson's hand and they put it on the table, and then Bishop does the knife thing really fast, and it's so awesome because again, I don't know anybody that's from my generation. When we've seen this movie, come on, let's all be honest. We've sat at a table with our friends and we've tried this. We all have at some point. So that's such an awesome scene. And then I like the way that they play Bishop Lance Henriksen. Again, another awesome actor in the horror movie genre, another awesome voice actor as well. But I like the way they play him in this movie because of what we were left with in the first movie with the android Ash. Bishop kind of plays himself until we get to the end of the movie, he kind of plays himself as you don't know what his intentions really are. You don't know if Bishop is going to be good or is he going to turn out the way that Ash did. You don't know yet. And his mannerisms, the way his eye movements are, in his speech sometimes, you're on the fence with Bishop in this movie. And then, of course, Hudson, played by the late Bill Paxton. He is awesome. He makes so much of this movie. His over the top when he's saying, it's over, man. It's over. It is just, it's, it is, he gives us, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. He gives us a good quote, one of the best cinema quotes in this movie. And also just a little fun fact about Mr. Bill Paxton. He is the only actor to have been killed by a predator, Terminator, and an alien. Because of those that know, he was in the first Terminator. He's one of the thugs at the beginning of the movie when Arnold first travels through time and he goes up to the three guys and it's the opening's like nice night for a walk. That's a young Bill Paxton. We had Bill Paxton in Predator 2. Which that's another movie. Again, I know I might be in the minority in this, but I can't wait to talk about that movie as well. But Predator 2 is another one of those. I like Predator 2. I think it's a fun sequel to the first movie. And he plays one of the officers in that, and then of course his role here. So the only actor to be killed by a predator, Terminator, and an alien. We get the awesome exposition here with Ripley where she's explaining to the Marines about the alien and what she encountered from the first movie. We also get to see the classic, the iconic Reebok shoes that she, and as she shows them that she can use the loader, one of the loaders. And those loaders look really, really awesome. And we're going to get to that at the end of the movie. That's kind of because it's kind of a little foreshadowing of the final battle at the end. And then we get this awesome badass moment where, again, I told you I'm going to be saying the word badass a lot in this movie. We get that awesome spot where they're prepping their weapons and preparing to head to the planet. We get that over again. It's just how this movie's set up. That adrenaline action movie where Vasquez and Drake. I believe his name is Drake. The two that have the miniguns and they're taking them and they're doing their poses with them and they're turning them to the side and doing all that. It's so awesome. And then we get that moment where they're in the ship, the small ship leaving the Sulaco, and they drop down and go down to the planet. Now here's one thing I will say. When we get to where this is one drawback I will say of this movie, and it's not a big nitpick, but depending on, again, this is one of those where depending on what format you watch this movie on, this is where some of the visuals of this movie, this scene, a little bit at the end as well, but this scene in particular is where the visual effects, they don't really hold up that well. And this is where the ship is flying through the colony buildings, it's coming down to the planet, and it's a little dodgy, but it's not too distracting. And again, depending on which format you watch this, if you watch this on original VHS, it's not going to look as bad. It's going to look fine. But when you start watching this on 4K upscaling, any Blu-ray DVDs, all that stuff, you are really going to see how the visuals in this particular scene don't hold up. But again, it's not too distracting. We're still going along for this ride. So then this is where once they land, like, so we've picked this movie up where we meet the Colonial Marines, they're dropping down to the planet. This is where the action and everything, now we're ready to turn this dial up and we are ready to go. This is where the action of this movie is about to pick up. Again, we see the awesome looking M56, I believe they're called M56 smart guns, I believe is what Vasquez and Drake have. And then we get the motion trackers in this. And the motion trackers, they add so much suspense to this movie. Now, this movie is much more of an action movie than the first one. The first one is a pure masterclass in building suspense. But this movie does a good job of suspense as well. And the big part of the suspense to this movie is the trackers and the way they're beeping and when they're calling out when something's getting close. Like, that really does add to the suspense in this movie, and it is awesome. And then a little side note here, some of these filming locations, when they get into when they actually get inside the facility, this is also when you see the steps and the stairs and all the metal gratings and all that, this is the same location that they shot Axis Chemicals in 1989 Batman. So just a little connective piece there that I thought was really cool. They also used this same area as well. They've used the same area for a lot of other movies. They also use this same area for, and the poster is actually sitting, it's actually sitting right behind me. Right there. They use this same area for the lower levels of the ship on Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan. So this area in the 80s was late 80s and early 90s was a very popular filming location. So making their way through, and they find the facehuggers in the lab facility, and then they find Newt. Who was the little girl at the beginning of the movie where they went out on the rover with her family and her dad came back with the facehugger attached to him. So we find Newt, who has been surviving here on her own now, roughly at this point, about 2 to 3 weeks' time has gone by, and this is where we get the other side of Ripley-ness, because throughout this movie, Ripley's looked at as when we start to pick things up, and she's this badass heroine, and she's kind of has those macho tendencies and that strong sternness and that leadership as this movie goes on, but this is where we see the soft side of Ripley, and and we pick up the chemistry with her and Newt in this. We instantly start picking up as they go along the mother-daughter relationship and the good chemistry that they have with this. And then, of course, I talk about some of the awesome quotes that we get from this movie. Newt delivers one for us where she says, of course, they mostly come out at night. Mostly. And then, of course, to go back a little bit, Hudson gives us, he's going to give us one here, where he says, "Stop your grinning and drop your linen." So we get, and then we're going to get, when we get to the end of this here, we get probably one of the most iconic lines in cinema history, but we're going to get to that at the end. So this is where we get this is also where we get the cool stuff. The action, we're picking up things here. We get the POV cameras that each one of the Marines has on them, and we have Ripley and Gorman and Burke. They're in the rover, which that rover looks absolutely awesome. I love the way it looks, and it has that late 80s, 90s sci-fi look to it. I love it. The POV cameras, they're really awesome. Kind of almost gives it like and this wasn't even a thing really in the 80s. We didn't really pick this up until we got later into the 90s with the Blair Witch Project, but we're getting kind of that early glimpse of mixing in like that found footage detail, kind of. I call it like that found footage view. We have the POV views of the body cameras that are on the Marines, and this and the way these body cams and the way that they do this, this adds so much suspense. And it really brings more of that horror element, because this is a movie that it's kind of a mix. You could classify it as a horror movie, but it's also more of an action movie as well. But this is where we get those cameras. This is where some of the horror suspense picks up, and then we start to see how the aliens, since they've started to transform the building, they started to transform some of the structure of the building. It looks really, really awesome. There are some shots in this where you can see matte paintings, but it's, again, not too distracting. You just kind of notice it more when we start getting in, like I said, you start noticing these things more when you have the 4K upscaling. This is where our suspense is going to pick up when they realize, due to the structure is basically a big fusion reactor, and they can't fire their pulse rifles, in which those pulse rifles look awesome. So then we see, though, where Sergeant Apone's asking them, he's telling them, hey, give me your clips, give me your rounds, we're not going to fire in here. And then you see Vasquez and Drake sneak clips, and then Hicks, they have all these pulse rifles and these higher tech weapons, and then you just see Hicks have a shotgun. It's so awesome. With some of this stuff. And then we get the terrifying visuals. We get the terrifying scenes here coming up where they find the colonists cocooned, and one of them is still alive. And this is where the suspense and the horror kind of really builds up, and it gets terrifying because she wants them to kill her. And she says that as the alien burst out of her. They then use a flamethrower. And as this is where we see the larger aliens, because this is, again, cool visuals. This is where our actions are really about to pick up, because the aliens have been blended into the structure that they created, and they start dropping down from the ceiling. And this is where the tracker beeping starts to add to the suspense, because now we are off and running, and the tension really starts to build up as these aliens are just taking these Marines out one at a time. And this is where you start, the gunfire starts going off, and we get the suspension and the tension as Ripley is inside the rover with Gorman. And Gorman is supposed to be, this is where we see how green Lieutenant Gorman is. He's supposed to be leading this, but he starts panicking. He has no idea what to do. He was not ready for this. And you see the look on his face. This is, again, the look on his face as he's panicking through this, and Ripley's trying to yell to get his team out of there, and she's trying to take matters into her own hands. This is where that suspension and everything really starts to build up, and this is where we see Ripley again she takes charge, and she drives the rover. This, again, really awesome. She starts driving the rover. She drives the rover in as they are still blasting while escaping out in the rover, and this is where we lose Drake. He gets the acid and stuff Todd on him, and he doesn't make it, which was, that was kind of a tough moment there for Vasquez, because that's her partner, and now he is gone. And then this is where we get Hudson continuing to freak out, and we get more. This is where I want to take this time to talk about Hicks and Michael Biehn. Again, a James Cameron alum. Of course, those that don't know, with Michael Biehn, he was Kyle Reese in Terminator. So he's worked with James Cameron. He also reprised his role in Terminator 2. If you ever watched the extended cut of the director's cut, there were scenes with him, and kind of like, I don't know if you want to call them like dream sequences with him and Sarah Connor. But I like his portrayal of Hicks. And for those that don't know, he actually wasn't originally cast as Hicks. The original actor, believe it or not, the original actor that was cast as Hicks, was James Remar. And for those that don't know who James Remar is, he was in Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. And then he was, I'm going to skip one here because I'm going to go back to it, but he was the main cop in Too Fast, Too Furious. But for those that know, Mr. James Remar was Lord Raiden in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. That masterpiece of a movie. So that's James Remar. He was actually cast as Hicks, and ended up not working out, and they brought in Michael Biehn. And I will say the one thing that I like about Michael Biehn is that when you look at his face, and the way he portrays the character, there's a vulnerability there. He's not as hardcore as the other Marines, so to speak. I mean, he's a badass, but he has a little bit more softer vulnerability. Excuse me one second. He has a vulnerability, and you see that come out in him as this movie goes. And I like, it's almost kind of the same to that way he portrayed Kyle Reese. Like, that Kyle Reese is this badass soldier, but he's got a vulnerability to him. He's got a sensitive part to him that really adds to gives him a depth, a range for his character. And again, and to go along with that, we also see the chemistry that he has with Ripley in this movie. We get to now where we find out, as the Marines, as Sergeant Apone now has been taken by the aliens. We come to find out now that Hicks is now the ranking officer to take charge. And then as we're going through with this, we find out, as I mentioned earlier, what Burke's true intention, what his intentions were all along with the aliens. That he is the one that sent the colonists out to the alien ship, and that his intention the whole time was to bring the aliens back to Earth. As they continue along, we'll find out a little more information on that. They find out that they have 4 hours until the facility explodes. So Bishop must make his way through the tunnels to make it to where he can upload to bring one of the ships down from the Sulaco so they can leave. And this is where we get like that cool visual, and it's very claustrophobic. And I remember watching this as a kid and thinking that they were really going to turn the dial up on the horror as he's crawling through, and you have that tight knit thing that one of the aliens was going to come out, like it was somehow an alien was going to make its way through there as well, and you were going to, for some reason, like kind of to echo what they did, the big scare scene in the first movie, that he was going to come face to face with an alien, but we did not get that. But we get the cool visual claustrophobic shot of it is very claustrophobic, of Bishop crawling through the tunnels. And this is where we kind of get some of the human side to Bishop, where he says, I think it's to this, I can't remember the line exactly, but I think he said, I may be artificial, but I'm not stupid, or something to that effect. So it kind of really, the way that he plays Bishop in this, he brings a really good, he has a good human element to him. But we're still not sure yet what Bishop's intentions are. We're still really not sure where he's at with this. So then we go to where they go back into the lab area, and Ripley tells Newt she needs to get some sleep, and so then eventually Ripley goes into the room where Newt's sleeping, and she's laying with her, and this is where we get the scene with the face huggers. And the way this is a very terrifying scene, because the way the face huggers are kind of coming up through the background of the cameras, and you see them in the way that they're attacking and doing it's a very terrifying scene with these face huggers. And then we see that Burke is watching, and he sees what's going on in the room, and he doesn't tell anybody. He just shuts the camera off. And come to find out that he actually is the one that set the room up, and that his plan this whole time was to he wanted to set it up to where the face huggers would impregnate Ripley and the crew. He wanted to have the face huggers, they were going to impregnate Ripley and the crew, and he was going to bring the aliens back through them, freeze them, put them in the hypersleep so the chest bursters wouldn't come out, get them back to Earth, and then they would have the chest bursters come out and do all their stuff back on Earth. That was his plan with the aliens. So we come to find out, Carter Burke, not a nice guy, but I still love the way that Paul Reiser is playing this character. This is where we get another cool suspense scene with the trackers, because they're in this room and they've sealed the doors. And we also get the cool stuff too, where they set up the sentry guns. That's really awesome. And we see they're showing them on the computer screens how the sentry guns are just firing off rounds, knocking these aliens out, but the aliens just keep on coming. It's a really awesome scene. But they're in the room here, and the tracker's getting more intense, the beeping's getting more intense, but they can't see where they're coming from. They have no idea where they're coming from because the doors are sealed. They can't get in through the doors. And this is where we get the cool, awesome moment where Hicks he goes up, and it's really cool. And it's terrifying. Because again, this is a horror movie. He goes up to the top of the ceiling, cracks one of the, he peeks up into the ceiling, and he sees the aliens coming through the whole time. That's where they were coming from. They found out the aliens in this are pretty smart, and they found out they couldn't get through the door, so they went up through the ceiling, and they were getting ready to drop down. And this was a cool scene right here. Again, we get to see how smart they are. We're building that suspense as they do drop down. This is also where Burke tries to take off. He tries to get away from everybody, but then this is where we get Burke's demise. And then this is also where we get the chase through the air ducts, where we get the awesome scene where Vasquez took an injury in fighting the aliens before that. And then Gorman, he decides, because him and Vasquez didn't get along, Gorman, being so green with these Colonial Marines, didn't really get along with them. So this is a really cool moment because Gorman decides that he's going to go back for Vasquez. And when he does, he has a grenade. And they realize they're not going to make it out of this. So they have the aliens coming at them, and they take the grenade. They hold it together with both their hands, set the grenade off, and there is the demise of Vasquez and Gorman. This is also where we see that Newt ends up, she falls through and ends up down in the water. So they lose her. Ripley and Hicks lose her. They find her because Ripley put the watch tracker that Hicks gave her. She put the watch tracker on Newt. So they're looking for her, and this is where she's in the water, and we get that iconic scene. And it's terrifying, but it's really cool where we see we get the shot behind Newt as you see the alien tail come up, and then the alien comes up from out of the water behind her, and she turns around. It's such an awesome visual. And then we get to where this is where Hicks is, they're kind of having their thing back and forth. They know they got to get out of there, but Ripley's telling Hicks, and she's saying, hey, I know that Newt is still alive. I'm going to go after her. And this is where we start to get that really strong, really dialing up heroin, macho, badass thing with Ripley, where she's now suiting up. She takes the pulse rifle, and it's so awesome. She takes the pulse rifle and the flamethrower together, puts them together. She's grabbing their grenades. She goes down the elevator, and we're kind of on our final thing here, where we have our countdown. The countdown to destruction's getting ready to go on. We have the voice counting down to when this facility's going to blow. She finds Newt. Newt was she finds Newt before the face hugger was getting ready to attack Newt, and then she rescues her. And then as the structure is falling apart around her, we get that as she's taking Newt away, we get that really like this is the part where there's no music, and this is really awesome. When we talk about how this movie builds tension and suspense, this is where they cut the music off and you just have the background noise, and you hear like the popping from the flames, and this is where Ripley and Newt come face to face with the queen alien, and it is such the way this alien queen looks, massive. It's just so badass, and this is where we get the visual, the lighting, and the way the lighting's flickering. This is where we get that visual of the smaller aliens coming from the sides, and they kind of have it's a really terrifying look because you got the smoke and the backlighting, and they're coming through. And then this is where again we realize how smart they are because they recognize when Ripley takes the flamethrower and she points it to the eggs. The queen, you see the queen look on both sides, and she backs off the aliens. And again, it's an awesome visual, and it's really terrifying to see the way these aliens are moving in this scene, especially when they're backing away. But this scene here is just, again, it's another awesome masterclass in how you build tension and suspense. And then Ripley just goes full badass, and she starts destroying all the face huggers. And this is where we get Ripley now. So the queen breaks herself away. She's laying the eggs underneath her, and she breaks herself away from that. And this is where we get to our climax here, where Ripley's facing off against the queen, and she gets back out to the platform. And this is where, again, we talked about this. We don't know what Bishop's true intentions are. And she thinks Bishop has abandoned her because the ship is not there where it's supposed to be. He's not there to rescue them and pick them up. And this is where they came up the elevator, and this is where it's really kind of funny to think about. But she looks down and she sees the other elevator coming up, and we know that's the queen alien. And then, as a kid, I never really thought about it too much. But as I've gotten older, my mind's always wondered, how did that queen alien start that elevator up? How did that happen? And I guess maybe Ripley, when she was pressing the buttons for the elevator, she pressed for that one. It didn't get in here on time, and the other one opened up quicker. And then you could assume that the queen alien recognized, again, because they're smart. She's seen how Ripley went up, and she saw the other elevator door open, and it was getting ready to take them up. I guess you could deduce that, but I always wondered, how did that queen alien get in the elevator, and how did it go up? But it's just a little small side thing for me, but it's fun. It's funny to kind of think about. And then and this is another cool scene as Ripley's standing there, she has nowhere to go. The structure's falling down all around her, and she's holding Newt, and then we see the elevator door open, and then the alien queen ducks down, comes out, and then right as that happens, Bishop flies up behind her. It's a really cool visual. Again, you can kind of see the map painting backgrounds in this. Again, if you're watching on a 4K upscale, you can really notice that. But visually, though, it still looks fun. It still looks awesome. So Bishop flies up, and they get on the ship as they escape away as the facility explodes. Now, you think that's it. Everything kind of starts to settle down. Your mind starts to go through this thing. You think, the tension's done. We're at like a peaceful place. She tells Bishop that he did all right. All these things, and you think all is well. Nope. As she's talking with Bishop, he gets stabbed right through the chest as we realize that the alien queen somehow made her way onto the ship. And then we get that cool shot of her just like the alien queen ripping Bishop in half. And that's a really awesome shot. And then we get that, again, another cool moment. The music stops, and we get that face-off with Ripley and the alien queen, and all you hear is just the alien queen's hissing, the sounds that she's making. Again, it's really setting up that suspense and that tension as they are getting ready to face off. This is where we get that iconic, when we talk, I mentioned this earlier, we get one of the most iconic lines and scenes in cinema history. Ripley gets into the loader, and as the alien queen is trying to get a hold of Newt, the alien queen turns around as the bay door opens, and Ripley is in the loader, and you get the shot where she's stepping down, and we see the shot of the loader feet taking one step, then it goes back up to Ripley, and Ripley says one of the most iconic lines in cinema, where she looks at the alien queen and she says, get away from her, you bitch. It is absolutely, that's such an iconic scene. Absolutely love it. And then she gives the alien queen, and she's in the loader, and she gives the alien queen a pimp slap. She gives her two, and the fight is on. Then Ripley notices she uses the buttons on the loader, and she opens up the loading space hatch door, and her plan is to get the alien sucked out into space. Well, as she's fighting with the alien and she lifts the alien up, the alien grabs a hold of the loader and pulls Ripley down into the chute with her. And as we get this scene where Ripley's hanging on to the ladder as the alien is underneath, the queen alien's underneath the loader, Ripley presses the button, and then the vacuum of space comes through. It's sucking everything down through there. The alien queen is still trying to put up one more good fight as she grabs a hold of Ripley's leg, and then she loses her grip as one of Ripley's shoes come off. We lose one of the iconic Reeboks out into space, but this is where the alien queen is now sucked out into space as Ripley is climbing back up. She presses the button to close the hatch, and then that is it of the alien queen. We then get to where Ripley is prepping the crew for hypersleep, and she's getting ready to put her and Newt into hypersleep, and that is the end of our movie. And that is going to do it for Aliens. Again, this is one of the most iconic movies ever made, and this year it celebrates its 40th anniversary. It is so crazy to think 40 years of Aliens. So that is going to do it for this episode, guys. I want to know what you think about Aliens. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts. I really would like to know what you think about this iconic movie. And again, that is going to do it for this episode on the 40th anniversary of Aliens. Coming up here, I am going to have a little bit from future upcoming episodes. I was going to do a full spoiler review discussion on Supergirl. However, I am not going to do a solo video of that. I'm actually going to be giving my spoiler thoughts on my other show, co-hosting with the Big Rob Theory. Our next episode is a full spoiler discussion on Supergirl. So I'm not going to do a solo video on that. I do have, if you want to check it out, I do have my non-spoiler review for Supergirl, but I'm actually going to give my spoiler thoughts on our show, Super Cinema Bros, where we're going to be talking about Supergirl. So if you want to know my spoiler thoughts on Supergirl, check out that show. Once again, that is Super Cinema Bros, co-hosting alongside myself and the Big Rob Theory. But my next episode coming up, we are getting ready for one of the biggest movies of the year. We are getting ready for Spider-Man, Brand New Day. That's just a couple weeks away. But my next episode is going to be my discussion on the new Evil Dead Burn. Can't wait to see that. Looking forward to checking that out and giving you guys my thoughts on that. But that is going to do it for this episode of Aliens. Again, if you like the content, you like the show, check me out on YouTube and Spotify. Just be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Also, check me out on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at CineJames Movie Talk. And also, as I mentioned, check out my other show that I co-host alongside the Big Rob Theory. It is called Super Cinema Bros. You do not want to miss those shows as well. So as always, guys, I appreciate all the love and support. And until next time, I'll see you at the box office.